My name is Maridarlyn Gonzalez. I am the first state director for LULAC, Pennsylvania.
Wonderful. And let's start from the beginning. I want to hear about your upbringing and your journey in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I was born in Dominican Republic, a small town called Cotuí, and I came here when I was 3 years old. Uh, I came to Philadelphia, lived in Kensington. That's where I grew up. And when growing up in Kensington is one of the things that really shaped me, as well as like coming here, because I dealt a lot or thought a lot about place and opportunity as it relates to place. But I graduated from Kensington High School, proud product of the Philadelphia School District, and later went to Penn State, studied geoscience, which a whole other conversation, which is fascinating.
Yeah, I want to hear about that too in a second. But tell us about the community around you. This was how many years ago?
Ooh, how many years ago?
But I'm trying to relate it to, well, when we think
Mm-hmm.
of Kensington today, but growing up, like tell us about the community
Yeah,
around you. What did that look like?
yeah. Well, the neighborhood I grew up in was called Badlands, you know, and it was a neighborhood, hardworking people. I think, some of the most creative people, right? We made things work. We found a way to make things work. Um, and it was very different than I think the neighborhood that I look at now. I think the neighborhood I look at now is people are more blended. People are back then. It was very separated, and back then I don't think Philadelphians saw Philadelphia as a place to thrive.
In terms of, growing up with sort of these two identities, right? Of being from the DR, living in Philadelphia. How was that whole dynamic? Did you ever feel like you had to pick one or the other?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I definitely had experiences where I had to feel like, okay, do I tap into my American culture or do I tap into my Dominican Latino culture? And then I was raised by Puerto Ricans, so when I go to DR, like my family here is from Puerto Rico, and when I go to DR, they're often like, "Where are you from? Are you Puerto Rican?" I'm like, "No, I'm Dominican." But I love the blend of culture. But yes, I definitely have had moments where trying to read which culture is appropriate to respond with, especially with family. So it's some of my cousins that came later, you know, used to tell me that I was Americanized, and that is true. But I look at them and it's like, who made you the king or queen of telling me how Latina or Dominican I am? So now I just accept it. It's a blend, and I'm proud of it.
Is there anything in particular you mentioned earlier, sort of the community figuring things out, being creative about certain things? Do you think you, to this day, took a lot of that and kind of helped you shape who you are today?
Absolutely. Um, I think it's more important to be persistent than to be perfect. And I think, or I know that my community is hopeful people, hardworking people, people who you may get knocked down today and tomorrow you try again because we're persistent. And I saw that in my community. There wasn't a choice to give up. It wasn't whether I'm going to do it. It was how am I going to do it. And that was a lot to do with growing up in Kensington, knowing, okay, I have these obstacles. I acknowledge it, but that's not going to stop me. And the town that I grew up in Cotuí, my grandmother had a pig in the backyard, and we had chickens. And it was only a couple years ago before she had roads. But my grandmother was always hopeful, and she always helped her neighbor, even when she had barely enough for herself.
When did you first realize that you were drawn to being community focused, or that you cared about equity and improving and learning, what it takes to improve communities?
That was just there. I think it was my parents being, like I talk about my grandmom. For breakfast, she would in Cotuí in DR where we grew up, well, where she grew up, she used to have a piece of bread for breakfast sometimes and just a black coffee with sugar. And she would take her little piece of bread and she would break it in half, and she'd have half for herself, and she wrapped the other one in napkin in case somebody passed by that was hungry or needed something. And it's just one piece of bread. And I mean, when she made dinner, if you stopped by or you walked by, she offered you a plate, and it wasn't a whole lot. So I think those coming from those individuals, it wasn't a thought to be community oriented. It was just, it didn't feel right to be anything other than that. But, being honest with you, Martin, reason I came to Dominican Republic, or came from Dominican Republic to the U.S. is because of the limited economic opportunities. And that was largely due to the town that I grew up in. For instance, where my mother and grandmother lived, only had access to a church. The roads didn't connect to the economic centers. The roads didn't connect to schools. So I never saw someone's ability to have opportunity based on what they were made of, but based on the circumstances and the opportunities that were given to them.
So now, how did you decide to go into geoscience, energy, policy? I mean, did you have others around you who, sort of introduced you to that, or how did you get to that?
Yeah.
Geospatial technology, geodesign, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have 2 degrees. My first one in geoscience with a focus in energy and policy. That was largely due back to my upbringing, or I spent my summers with my mom in Dominican Republic, and she had a small store. And in Dominican Republic, a lot of the main areas have access to energy, but in the smaller towns, electricity goes. And for my mom, who has a small store, her produce would go bad if she didn't have access to energy. And so it made me think about energy as a tool for development, energy as a tool for safety. The street lights turn on when you have energy. Your home feels safer, your neighborhood feels safer. Access to books, access to information is all now through the internet in a lot of ways. So I saw energy as a tool to help people help themselves. And I actually did a project later on when I started studying geospatial information, or GIS and geodesign. I did a project where I looked at the road networks in Dominican Republic and matched that up with disposable income in certain areas. And areas with higher disposable income after they pay for their cost of living were areas that also had more roads, and they were also the ones that had more local roads. So local versus regional versus national. And those local roads are really important because they're about network and people connectivity. That's where your small shops go in, and that's where people can shop at the bakery at. That was the energy piece. I saw it as a tool for development, a tool to help people help themselves. And then the mapping came a lot from my experience in Philadelphia. I was working in the nonprofit sector, and I saw that a lot of the issues that we were addressing, all the maps look very similar, which made me curious and was like, this can't be a coincidence. And so I started to study, look at the history of Philadelphia, how the neighborhoods were developed, and also look into why are these things all lining up and how place matters.
Very interesting. How does your education later translate into the work? Tell us a little bit of what you've done in the past.
Yeah, so my education helps a lot. I'm now working in the energy field. I did for very little. Um, and that's also the power of social networks, right? I got this energy degree and I was like, wait, I don't know anybody in the energy field. How am I going to do this? Um, yeah, it shapes a lot of what I do now. Even though I don't work in the energy field, I look at that was a bachelor's in science. I look at the methods that we use to understand issues, understand, phrase a problem, explore how to solve or understand that problem. And then with the mapping now, I can be like, no soy loca, I'm not crazy. I can prove it. Like, these are not just my theories, but rather it's it's an incredible thing when you can show the data and say, and here's the thing that I'm trying to convey, and be able to put that into a product. So it's not just words, and people can engage with it and interact with it and better understand it.
So now let's talk about LULAC. First of all, to those who may not know what LULAC is, can you give us a description?
Yes, so LULAC is the oldest and largest civil rights organization for Latinos, and it was founded in Texas. It's much bigger, or has a much bigger presence in the Southwest, and we've been doing some work here to grow it in Philadelphia and across the state.
And what does it mean to you? You've been doing this work for a while, but becoming the first ever state director for PA, the Commonwealth is extremely important. And what does that mean to you?
What it means to me,
It's also like not the easiest thing to do. It takes a lot of work, and I've seen that firsthand.
yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm not sure what it means to me yet, but not like mean to me as the director, but what it means for my community excites me. It means for my community, representation, being organized, being able to have a voice for my community, being able to bring people together to be engaged. Pennsylvania, Latinos are one of the fastest growing populations here, In Philadelphia, we're about 15% of the population. That has grown in the last 10 years by 25%. We're somewhere around 240,000 Latinos here in Philadelphia and many more across the state. And yet, we do not have the representation at the state level or at the city level that reflects the share of the population that we are. So having this organization for my community, and I want to build it for my community, and I don't plan to sit in this role forever. I just want to build it so that we have a place to have these conversations, and so that when people come to us, then we can say, this is what we need, this is who we are, and this is our value as a community.
Why do you think, oftentimes our communities are not engaged? What's the disconnect? What are we missing? How come we're not excited, for elections, to learn about, politicians and what they have to offer, and why do you think it's we're disconnected?
Yeah, with that, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I sometimes question, are we as disconnected? I think there's a couple factors. I with LULAC, I work with individuals that are very much engaged. But to your point, I think there's a couple things at play. It's hard to pinpoint exactly which one is the main thing. One, you have individuals coming. If you're a foreign-born individual, you're an immigrant from another country like myself, but let's say you came later in life, you're coming to the U.S. and you're understanding a whole new government, a whole new system. And the United States government is, for the reasons of check and balances, can be very fragmented, right? And so You have to learn these different departments, and this department deals with this, but that department deals with that. And that's speaking on the departments. We're not even talking about the politicians and the process which they have to go through, and that, and within that process, what are your opportunities for engagement? And all of this is most likely in English. And so then you have the language barrier. I think there's also a cultural component there, at least for me, from my personal experience. I was always told, you work hard and you put your head down, and you'll be fine. And that is not the case. You work hard and you shouldn't put your head down. By working hard, you are investing into the city. You are paying into this country. You deserve a voice about what your future looks like, what your access to opportunity looks like, and the protection of your rights. You are invested just as everyone else. And so I think we haven't taken that position where I think we should feel entitled to our rights, right? We should feel an ownership of that. And instead, I think we say, oh, I'm going to mind my business and I'm going to work hard and, things will shape out. No, I think things will shape out if you are involved. They will shape out. I won't leave it to chance. So I think those are the different factors. One, the understanding of government. And two, I don't think our government's as simple as people may want to think it is. And then, as a population, we're not a monolith. Depending on which country you're coming from, you have a different relationship with government. You have a different understanding with government, of its role. And so I think we have some core values. We believe that everyone deserves access to opportunity and a good quality life. How to get there might look different.
So when people say like, oh, this strategy is to go after the Latino vote, like what does that even mean, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some of your key initiatives for this year? What are some of the things that you believe are important for LULAC PA?
One really key piece that we're working on is reaching out to the Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley is extremely important, and the Latino population there is growing. It is changing the dynamic of the Lehigh Valley. I think it is wise and important for Philadelphia, not just Latinos, for Philadelphia to be in tune with what's happening in the Lehigh Valley and be connected with them. Because often a lot of the issues that Philadelphia faces end at Harrisburg, right? So we see this influx of population coming into the Lehigh Valley.
A lot of places, the majority of the population is Latino.
Yes. So so Philadelphia has the greatest count or the greatest number of Latinos, but because these other areas in the Lehigh Valley have a smaller population size, there's a greater share of Latinos there. So presence feels very different, and we're seeing representation in government there that we have not seen in Philadelphia because of that share of the population, and probably other factors as well. Many people may be coming from New York or New Jersey. They may be multi-generational here in the States and have a different understanding of government and a different importance for involvement. So that is big. Making sure that we are not just Philly-centered, we're thinking about that area. And then making sure this is new to us, right? Achieving statehood in Pennsylvania is new to us, which is really, Pennsylvania is a key state, national elections. Can this be an opportunity for us as Latinos to also be part of that national agenda, which I have not seen? And so I hope that Pennsylvania is a key to that, or a doorway for that.
What have you learned about the community, being involved in this work so far, as it relates to trust and engagement?
I've gone knocking on doors and talking to people, and we do, community events. I think people sometimes question how much they know. They question if they know enough to be engaged. And we used to do Café con Leche series. We did one or two, which were super fun. But through those, we took these issues from looking at it from a system or policy perspective and looking at it from a human perspective. What do you deserve? What do you aspire to when it comes to the quality of your education? What do you aspire to when it comes to the quality of your parks? And I think when people realize they know more than what they give themselves credit to, maybe they will be more open to engaging. And I think getting them to engage first, and you'll learn as you go. There's still so much I feel like constantly involved in this work that I still don't know, and that's just part of being human. That's just part of learning and saying, okay, you know what? I thought it was this, but I thought it was that. Got it. Changing gears. And the other piece I would say, everything doesn't have to be political. Like everything doesn't have to be people that are running for office. People can be very effective engaging their city departments. If your issue is your local park, is there a friends of the park group that you can engage with? Is there a police advisory group that you can be a part of? I think those are really key places for people to tune in that have perhaps more direct impact on their day-to-day life than it has to be these really large elections.
Yeah, or also, the other thing too is like people always focus on, okay, election time, and then they just forget about the promises and, the follow-up and continuing to be there to make sure like those issues that you voted for are, become a reality. We spoke about the Latino community and how we're not a monolith. And, just thinking of different, generations, like, can you tell us a little bit about the work around, younger folks, students, to professionals and elders, other groups that there's, initiatives designed around?
So with our younger folks for LULAC, we have a scholarship that we engage them with. We also work with We Love Philly, who has a really great mentoring program. So encourage, the kids that we engage with to enter into that. For the middle, we have, we do gatherings. We do Lechon y Alegría. So what the civic engagement look like, it doesn't have to be in an auditorium listening to a panel per se. We meet it with joy. So we have our Lechon y Alegría event where we have pork and food and a band, and it's a really festive time to celebrate culture, but also get connected with other people and hear about the top issues. And last year, we were really fortunate to have the Committee of 70 be there. They're an incredible organization to be able to talk about how the city works and talk about the upcoming elections at that time. And then with our seniors, we try to make Lechon y Alegría free for them, but we're also planning a bingo night with them, and so making sure we're meeting people where they are, and I love bingo night. Like, invite me, Domino's, bingo, I'm there, and it's about relationship. Let's foster community, and then maybe through that relationship, you say, hey, I had a question about this, or hey, I was curious about that, or I may want to be engaged in this way. And now we can have that conversation. So I think improving that network and improving that, shaking up that civic engagement or being informed or being in community doesn't all have to be work. We can do it our way. We're going to do it with parandas, and we're going to do it with Domino's y cafecitos, and, why not?
So aside from LULAC, I know you're also involved in other nonprofit organizations, and, these are volunteer-based, and, we also have day jobs. How do you balance that, and what motivates you? Because it's really easy to kind of give up and not continuing or having the energy sometimes, to spend your weekends, after hours, after work, working on these things? Like, what motivates you?
Yeah. My mother was always someone, my Puerto Rican mother that raised me. She was always someone that was like, well, if you don't like something, what are you going to do about it? You know, like, don't sit here and complain. Do something or leave it alone, And so,
Very direct.
yeah, she was like, you want to do something? Ah, pa qué? And so what motivates me is the people that I work with. What motivates me is I'm very grateful for the opportunities that I've had, and I feel that I want to be a person that supports or fosters those opportunities for others. So the organizations that I've chosen, a lot of them around economic empowerment, housing access, about working with the youth, about access to really great outdoor spaces. They all resonate with me because those are the things that I would love to have growing up. And I think they're core to how our city works. And the people that I get to work with. I think with each of these organizations, I think about what is the thing that I can give. I've had other organizations reach out and ask me to be involved, and I say thank you. But if I don't see the thing that I can give or the role that I can play, what is my piece? I'm not going to solve everything. I'm probably not the best person to solve a lot of things. But know my strengths, my weaknesses. What is the piece that I can do as part of the bigger piece? And then through that work, I meet really incredible people. They're also doing their piece, and that's inspiring. And that gives me hope that I'm not in it by myself.
Now let's talk about Philadelphia and what it represents to you, at a personal level, but also like professionally.
I mean, it's the birthplace of our democracy, right? Um, Philadelphia, Philadelphia is an incredible city. I think there's a lot in Philly that goes underappreciated. We're a very walkable city. We are a city of many firsts, and I think that makes Philadelphians courageous in that way. We're willing to try things. We want to be better. We have this fighter spirit. So for me, Philadelphia was full of a lot of joy. It's brought me a lot of joy, but it's also full of realities. It continues to grapple, as it is a city of many firsts, continues to grapple with high poverty rates, right? And you see that, you see the city fighting to move forward, though it deals with these really real issues and barriers.
And what role do you see yourself playing in, making a difference, changing some of these realities that you mentioned?
Well, when it comes to research, I want to, provide the information for the doers, for key stakeholders to be able to make an informed decision. And this is both highlighting, I think in research, often we find data that a lot of the data that we collect is around issues and not always around strengths. So I think it's important to highlight both. And that's not just being optimistic or, trying to sell anybody or anything. But when we build on strengths, I think we build on something solid, and we build on a very, positive energy, and we build on the things that we do well, which I think sets us up for success. So being honest in the research about the realities, but also, and the realities include the barriers, but they also include where we thrive. So that's, I think, more the kind of supportive role I play, and I think that's super important because you cannot do everything yourself. So making sure people have the information they need to do the work forward. And then for, I guess, more active role, and that's mainly through LULAC, is building something where myself and others can have a voice, right, as a collective. and then being able to be clear in our ask and clear in who we are. I think aiming for representation, aiming for economic opportunities, which all it falls within that mission. That's what I would like to see for all Philadelphians. And I think there's a huge opportunity within the Latino population, which is one of the fastest growing and also one of the ones that face some of the highest poverty rates.
So reflecting on, your upbringing, education, to now your career, what would you say to your younger self 10 years ago?
I would say go forward. Everything's not gonna be perfect, but it's forward. Whether it's a small step or a big step, it's forward.
And for someone who's considering a similar career path, what would you say to them?
I would say be curious. Don't be afraid to ask. Ask people for help when you need it. I'm always open. Anybody who knows me, they're always like, hey, I'm curious about this, I'm curious about that. I at least try to make 30-minute cafecitos to have a conversation. Because a lot of people helped me understand, things that I was curious about. So stay curious. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And also don't be afraid to pitch your idea. Be audacious. Say, this is what I want, and go for it.
Something that I want to touch on is mentorship, which, I haven't had the best experience with mentors. I once asked somebody years ago, a leader from our community, if they could serve as a mentor, and they're like, I don't have time. And I was like, no, like, you don't understand. Like, I'm not asking, for a lot of time. Like, I just want to have you there in case, I have a question, or, I'm having a difficult time dealing with a situation that in this city is, it's very challenging because the city is very parochial, and, it's all about who you know and if certain circles of people. So coming from the outside in, it's really hard, especially for, if you don't come from generations of wealth, or from, affluent family members in this city. So how's that experience for you? You mentioned that people helped you along the way. Mm-hmm. Was that the case?
Yeah, I definitely asked for help, and some people were more open than others. If I'm going to be honest, companies have a board. Why can't individuals have a board? I have mentors that I aspire to be like them in different ways. And there's some that are very different than me. And that's because I want to challenge myself to look, to think differently than my own experience. Because when you're working in Philadelphia, you're dealing with people with all different kinds of experience. So understanding a different perspective is important. And there's been times that mentors have advised me, and I have said very nicely, thank you. I'm going to do something different.
You gotta go with the gut feeling sometimes,
Yeah. And I went with my gut feeling, but I was still very polite. Thank you, and I appreciate it. And there were times where they advised me, and I didn't see what they were seeing, but I'm glad I took the advice. And I said, and I put my best foot forward, and I took the advice, and had trust that they were seeing something, or they understood something that I didn't quite understand yet.
And if somebody is interested in learning more about LULAC, where can they go?
They can go to lulacphilly.org. It's since the state is newly established, we're working on getting that website up, but lulacphilly.org has all the information you need.
Wonderful. And lastly, looking back at your journey, what is the thing that you're most proud of?
I think the way I treat others, even in my best days and my worst days. And even when I have to be stern and forward, go and see people for best intentions. And I hope that others felt that. So I'd say treat others well. I mean, you have to put up boundaries when you have to, but be open to people, be kind to people. And I would say I'm proud of the relationships I have because of that.
Great. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that's a wrap.